Welcome to Testimony Mountain. I'm so glad to be back here with Veronica Swift, and we're going to pursue a difficult topic today about the Great Divide with survivors, with infiltrators, with all different kinds of things that seem to be proliferating right now in this season and causing a lot of distress and confusion in the survivor community. And so, just to start off with, Veronica, if you want to share where people can connect in with you and what you offer.
Hi, Dina. Thanks for having me again. I'm a blogger. I write on a website that was graciously set up for me called veronicaswift.blog, B-L-O-G. And there are hundreds and hundreds of articles that I've written over the past 3.5 years that deal with a subject that I came to very new in October of 2020. And it kind of horrified me, astonished me, fascinated me, and really intrigued me. But I didn't really understand it very well. So writing is a way I come to understand things. So I wrote a lot of articles, and then I wrote a book, and you can get that for free on the website as well if you want to read it. It's a beginner's book. I've read a lot of books on the subject of survivors and SRA survivors, and I didn't really have any good way of categorizing that information. A lot of it was really over my head. So I thought, well, where's the book for people like me, people who came to this stuff brand new? So I thought, well, nobody else is writing it. I might as well write it. So if you're brand new to this arena of SRA survivors, of the occult and how it connects with abuse and torture, really, and horrible things, you can read about it there and get an idea of it without getting too overwhelmed. So that's where I'm at most of the time, along with veronicaswift.locals.com. We have a little community there. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And this is a difficult topic we're going to be looking at today. There's so much controversy, and it gets into, who's good, who's bad, who's infiltrating, who's real, all of those kinds of things. And it can be scary and confusing. And then there's so much material out there on both sides that, attacking different survivors and things that, it can be like, where's the truth? So
yeah, it's almost, so having started from understanding why I came upon one survivor of the deep part of the occult, and it took me 6 months to really begin to grasp the depth of what she had said at that time. And it was only after that I realized she's not the only one. There are lots of other people who have gone through this. And so I thought, okay, so I started learning about them one by one. So you find one person and you learn as much about their story. At least this is what happened to me. And then they connect with another person. And so you read about that person's story. And there are a number of what I would call prominent and face front people who write a lot, who write books, who are doing podcasts and shows. They have a lot of videos out. It's fairly easy to find their information. It's fairly easy to read about them and to start. And then you start seeing patterns, like one survivor story dovetails with another's in many ways. And that one dovetails with another's in different but similar ways. And so I made it through about 12 or 15 survivors before I did write the book. And it was striking. Their stories are just, they're horrifying. They take a while to get through, and you've got some grief you've got to deal with when you read them, and you do get through it. But it's not an easy kind of a thing. I was trying to when I wrote the earlier articles, I was trying to make sure that it wasn't overwhelming, because it can get really overwhelming at times. And I kept my head down for a long time in terms of, I wasn't on social media. I wasn't contacting any of these people. I wasn't really, I was just kind of interested in reading and watching what they said. And then I discovered that there's a survivor, what they call a survivor community out there. And not everybody is a part of it or a member of it, but there are a lot of people who join online. They talk back and forth. They're in groups. They're in chats. They're in cahoots with each other, if you want to say, that way. And then you learn that there are factions within these groups. And so doesn't like so-and-so. And then another person doesn't like the first person. And then there's an entire group that doesn't believe the second group. And so they start learning about who thinks who is not telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And then you discover there's a whole other level of almost infighting amongst these individuals. Then there's an entire other group of people that won't even enter the conversation. They're like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere near that. So there's the silent group. And I think that's actually the silent majority. I think the majority of people are in that category. They're not going to talk. They're not going to tell their stories publicly. They're not going to enter the fray. They're not going to get involved in anything back and forth. Then there's an entire other group of people that doesn't want hardly any of the survivors to tell anything. And so they're going to start attacking people online, and they're going to attack everything they say and try to make it seem like everything they say is a lie. And this is not restricted to one person, believe me. There are groups of people that I almost think that the occult gathers small groups of people and assigns them to certain survivors. Because what I've seen is one person talks about the group of 5 people that's constantly attacking them. And then another survivor talks about this small group of, 3 or 4 people that's constantly attacking them. And then other survivors have groups of 10 or 12 that are constantly attacking them. So there's a lot of this mean stuff that goes on. And then because everyone's story dovetails, you also see, and it's not really funny, but I kind of have to laugh because it's so hard to watch. One person says, but that's my story. You stole my story from me. And then the first person says, but that was my experience. And then the third person says, the second person stole that story from them. I've literally seen a chain link of like 7 people talking about one particular story, and all of them believe that it's them. Well, they're all fighting and telling each other that it's not. So once you start looking at this stuff, it starts to get really crazy. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say about the same story is that when you understand the use of virtual reality and how extensively it is used on survivors, it's not, in one way they're both right, because it is everyone's story, but, it can feel like you're stealing my story. And so I think if we understand more the tactics of the cult system, it can help explain kind of what's going on and bring some clarity because, if they're using the same virtual reality program on you, it is real to you. And it is your story. But someone else is going to have the same one because they went through the same virtual reality programming. So anyway, that's just a thought there on that issue.
So you see, so question for you. If all these people are going through the same virtual reality stories and they're all yelling and pointing a finger at one another, your quote, and that is exactly the phrase that they use, you are stealing my story. You would say that it's valid, they've had an identical experience, and it's virtual reality.
So according to Svali, they were using virtual reality in the 60s.
I saw that.
So I, have one brief memory where I was probably 4 years old and I was trying to tear off the goggles that was on me. So, sometimes we think that virtual reality and AI are modern things, but when we understand that, it's been used in the system 30 to 70 years back, the technology is advanced, then, it kind of makes sense why people would have such similar stories.
Yeah,
So,
that makes a lot of sense to me. That explains quite a lot, actually. Um,
and the whole system of the cult is to divide us. That is their intention. They don't want us free. They don't want us to get healing. They don't want us communicating with each other. They want us to be fighting so that we don't, we see each other as the enemy instead of who the really real enemy is, which is them, you know.
right. Yeah.
And if we could unite, wow, we would be a force to reckon with.
I think that's really critical. I think that's really, really critical. And I think that the problem is that there's so much volatility and I don't want to say hatred, just it's almost beyond hatred.
Yeah. It
Uh,
and
Go ahead.
again, it's part of the programming to be divided internally and then to express that out. And I'm so grateful for the prayer minister I'm working with right now. She is so amazing, in that I can tell her about, I deeply care for her as a person, as well as I have parts that are furious with her and
Yeah.
think that she's ruining my life and that hate her. And sometimes that comes out,
Yeah.
but she's able to respond, gently. And that is part of the healing process for me. But that multiplies, with survivors. And that is the challenge because we have parts who are programmed to hate other survivors and to do everything we can to cause chaos and to prevent healing and freedom for all of us.
Yeah, I'm seeing that really extensively, especially with a couple of people who have taken me on as an adversary
Mhm.
for over a year now. It's been over a year, and the pattern seems, and tell me if I'm not right, but the pattern seems to be that they follow is that they love bomb you first. Oh, you're so great. This is wonderful. What you're doing is whatever. So they've got all these opinions, and it's a hook. I think it's meant to draw you in and um, tear down your any barriers you might have.
Mhm.
And then as the communication goes on, it's almost like an exponential curve. It's flat for a little while, and then it just shoots up in the air with the attacks, the violence, the verbal assaults, and then it goes from not just that's usually behind the scenes it starts, and then it comes out into the public, and the attacks go public, and they're vicious. And it's hard to respond to those. So in terms of what I see also, and I'm a prime case. I'm like a case study for this, for any person who comes to this subject new and not understanding it. So a lot of people, I think, come to these stories or come to like Twitter or Facebook or wherever the antipathy happens,
Mhm.
and they get attacked and they just recoil and hurl themselves out of the picture. So then they just don't want to see anything anymore. They don't want to look
Yeah.
at anything anymore. They don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. And I almost think that's the goal, is to
Yes.
get people to stop listening to folks so that nobody learns about anyone's story. And if you don't learn about anybody's story, then they're safe. They're safe in their silence, in their shield.
Yes. And that's why it's so important for us to understand how the mind control works and those double binds and all of the different programming of parts that happens. And so, while, do not condone what they're doing, I have compassion for them in the sense that they're just following their program.
Yeah.
And, those are parts of them that think that they're protecting, typically in the mind control programming, it's all about protection and safety
Mm.
for that survivor and for their loved ones. And so, it's possible that the beginning portion, they were, honest and true and loved what, was happening. And then their parts were threatened that, if you don't destroy this,
Yeah.
this, and this person, then, we'll kill your loved ones. And, when that is done so very early, it is so deeply ingrained in you, you don't see, any other way. And so without the help, I believe, of the true Lord Jesus, you know, you just follow along in those patterns. Um, and so I I had some things recently come about, the programming I experienced in the womb. And it is a very deep root in my life, that the Lord is exposing at this time, and when it is so deeply rooted from the womb, it takes time and care to process that and, to be able to work that through.
Yeah.
And so,
It's so you're nonverbal, you're pre-cognitive, it's all almost subconscious at that point.
yeah,
That's got to be really difficult to even figure out to start with.
it is. And, I'm grateful for how the Lord gently and gradually brings things to the surface, as we surrender to Him. Because, I don't know that I would have been able to handle it, if it had come several years ago.
Mhm. Yeah.
But recognizing, and learning more about the system helps to understand what's going on. And just want to put a recommendation out there for Savali's newest book that came out this last week. It was the first time that I heard someone describe, a memory that I had gone through in the womb.
Mm.
And, I'd never heard anybody else talk about it, but her explaining it put those puzzle pieces together to go, okay, this did happen.
That's the key, I think. That's the key, and it's the key to healing
Mhm.
is understanding, because you can't heal everything. As I understand it, you really can't heal everything that you don't comprehend.
Yeah.
So it has to come to conscious in
Mhm.
some way
Yeah.
or other. But that's exactly what I am seeing. Are everybody looks at other survivors' testimonies so that they can find themselves in it. They
Mhm.
can find that key that will unlock that next step for themselves to take that next, path on the, side step or side path on the main journey,
Mhm.
so that you can come back to yourself. So yeah, that's what concerns me the most about all of this attacking, etc., is that so many people now, they look at all of it and they go, I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
And we don't know how many more Svalis are out there. And for anybody who doesn't know who Svali is, that's a pseudonym used by a woman who was um, uh, born into the Jesuit order. If you're familiar with Jesuits but don't know that they are the occult, they are the occult, and they operate with the same kind of mind control programming that many other occult divisions operate with. Her name is spelled Svali, and she writes at svalyspeaksagain.wordpress.com. So she has posts there you can look at for free if you can't afford her book. But her book, she's had a new book out, and I don't remember the title of it, but it's also excellent.
I think
Her case. Go ahead.
it's the Never Give Up, but part one. It's going to be a trilogy, but the second one just came out this last week. And so,
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but her latest video with Jan Duval on Discovering Truth Network was astonishing. Just mind blowing, the stuff that she revealed in there.
yes.
Made so much sense. She talked about Alice in Wonderland programming and Mage programming, and there were some jaw dropping things that she said. So yeah, but she's a good case study for the kind of things that the other thing that I have been seeing, which is she said she got free, and then she was dragged back in.
Mhm.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, she said they killed every single individual in her class to try to get her to acquiesce back into the group at one point.
When she was 14, yes, there were 7 that they did that to, not the whole group.
Not the whole group.
Now, in the second book, it has several more attempts, so there might be more information there. But
so she came in and out a number of times, and I'm not so sure that's not more typical than atypical. What do you think about that?
I definitely do, and I will say that I can't guarantee that I'm 100% out, and I'm seeing some signs that I may not be, and that's hard sometimes to face. Because in our presenter life, we don't know anything more. And it's like, as far as I know, I'm not involved. But I think we have to come from a place of humility before the Lord. The Lord has told me that there's a line that they cannot cross because of the work that I've already done and his work in me. But, I'm just hanging on to him for everything because it's so much more complicated than we know and understand. And, sometimes it can be so absolutely overwhelming. And, I'll just admit that the suicide programming has been very strong, this last month, but the simplicity, and this is what I just want to encourage survivors, is the true family, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, true Jesus, just say, put your hand in our hand and take the next step. Don't try to figure it all out.
Right.
We have a way through. And, in this, we have to believe that God is more powerful and stronger than the enemy, than all of these other things. And that's what's really encouraging with Svali's testimony. And even in her, second book of just, talking about the system and, the different councils and how they have plans, to destroy the world and all that, but they're blocked because of what Jesus has done, and so I have to stay in that place of my life is in their hands and I have to trust them. And trust is a really big issue for survivors. I'm going through trust training, on this journey.
I saw a lot of that and didn't understand it in the very beginning. I couldn't understand why people were very, very wary of what I was writing and who I was, and they all wanted to talk to me on the telephone, and I did not want to do that at all. I didn't know them from Adam, right? But I think that was a lot of trust testing, like, who are you and can I trust you? And are you going to turn on me? And are you a plant? Are you an infiltrator? Because it's so common. It's so common. And not having known that, I couldn't really figure out what on earth they were getting at. And it irritated me at times. And I just felt like shutting down and shutting out. And because it took such a lot of energy to understand. It still does, frankly. It takes a lot of energy to understand all this. I mean, not to go back to Svali every single time, but her example of cell phones and how cell phones are great for the occult because they can tailor. They know who you are. They know your name is on your cell phone bill or whatnot, so they can tailor the subliminal images that they flash at you. They can tailor your programs. We've heard other survivors talk about how they've disabled certain programs so they couldn't get into Facebook, or they couldn't get into this program, or they couldn't get into that program, or they shuttled them into one email because nothing else worked. Or so we know they can easily mess around with survivors' cell phones, and and Svali has talked about some of the detailed ways that they can just flash an image and trigger a program or trigger a part to come out. And so it's great for them, not so great for the survivors. She also said that at one point she locked her cell phone in the trunk of her car because it was a lot more difficult for them to get at her when she did that, which is it's a great suggestion. Probably all of us should lock our phones in the trunk of our car at night so we can get a good night's sleep. The trust thing is hard, especially as someone who's looking in. So I'm thinking about other people who are also just beginning to look in on survivors, and if they don't trust you, that's probably why.
And, with the cell phone and different things like that is, several years ago, I, had some memories surface that really freaked me out. And it was like, it was around something called the Book of Secrets. And it was like, I knew that within me, I contained information that if they knew that I knew, my life was, you know, in great danger.
Yeah.
Um, and I had probably 3 or 4 days of just, intense, I'll call it paranoia, but just terror and panic, and it was one of those things where, my prayer minister at the time was not local, so I couldn't even reach out because I knew they were monitoring my phone and my computer, and it was just freaky because it's like, I can't even reach out for help.
Yeah.
And again, that's the place where I had to, um come to the place of believing that either God is who he is and he's stronger and more powerful than all of this, or he isn't.
Right.
And, I just had to make a choice to begin walking out that process of, I believe God is more powerful. My life is in his hands and I can trust him.
Yeah.
And the area of trusting other people is kind of interesting because when you look at scripture, we're never told to trust people. We're only told to trust the Lord.
Yeah.
And so there's a validity to, being cautious or whatever as the Lord leads you. But for me, it is this place of, um, I'm going to, seek the Lord and who he connects me with. I'm going to trust that he is there and that he is between me and them. And, I've had I've asked him if there's infiltrators in our ministry, and he has said yes.
Yeah.
And, I've said, if they are sent from the enemy, then just take, just I'm trusting you to remove them in your timing and your way. But
Yeah.
if the enemy has sent them, but you have purposes of restoration for them being here, then I'm trusting that you will give me the grace and you will protect us. And I've seen him remove some people. There's some people that are still there, but it is a constant place of trust, as I walk that out, that God is bigger than anything the cult can do.
Yeah.
Now, I have not had the direct public attacks that a lot of you have had, and I don't know if it's just because I'm fairly limited. I don't do a lot of social media at all, and I just have Testimony Mountain, that I'm a part of, and so I know things could get challenging down the road. And there's a couple times when I've said, "Oh, I think I'm done. Maybe I should stop doing this." But
Well, that's the point I'm at. Like, how much is it worth it for one person to really try hard?
Mhm.
And so what path forward do you take? Do you keep going? Because the sledgehammer blows just keep coming.
Yeah.
And they don't get any less. And they started the second month I started the blog. I
Mhm.
mean, this has been ongoing since the beginning.
Yeah.
But the opposition understands that they in mass can exhaust you
Yes.
with constant attacks
Yeah.
because they're constant. If you listen to David Schroeder's YouTube channel, he has a video every day about the new attack of the day or the evening or the morning or the afternoon. And
Mhm.
he's been doing that. He's been on doing those videos for like 10 years.
Wow.
They don't ever quit. They may change, they may rotate people in and out of the attack squad, but they don't ever quit.
Yeah.
And they don't usually change their story unless they get worse. If it gets worse, they'll change it, but if they don't get worse. So the tactic is to exhaust you. The tactic is to drive people away
Mhm.
so that they either block the other person or they, just exit because it gets too hairy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand the risks involved, at least to a certain degree. For survivors even coming together in groups or sharing their story and all of those kinds of things. When I've talked to the Lord about Testimony Mountain and maybe I should just, stop, um, the question that he asked me is, he said, then who wins?
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, okay, well, I don't want that. I don't
Right.
want that to win. And I know ultimately who wins, and that is the true Lord Jesus. And, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I understand the risks for survivors of trusting each other, of talking, of sharing stories, and all of those kinds of things. And I understand why people don't. I know that, some people are working on, how do we get out the stories anonymously or whatever so that they can at least get out. But we get to walk this out with the true Lord Jesus. And as we get to trust him more and more, we get to take those steps with him. There's some people who I do believe have some open doors that make them more vulnerable to things, and that's something that we all can be aware of is, where are my open doors where the enemy has more access, and praying through those and shutting those down. But ultimately, it's about trust, and that's not easy for any of us.
No, it's not easy. It's not easy, and we see the effects of people who trust too much, and then really get hammered.
Yeah.
And the aftermath of that is not, it's not pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't come just from people who are programmed or weaponized either. Sometimes it's friendly fire too. So
Yes.
there's the individuals who are doing their best, but they get triggered and don't know how to handle it, except to what I would call Mount Vesuvius all over individuals or groups or whatnot. So you can experience inappropriate behavior from a lot of different angles. So it is disheartening. It's hard to see. It's hard to watch. It's hard to know too that the people that are attacking you are just, they're like a cornered, frightened, traumatized animal, right? They're lashing out because they're hurting.
Yeah.
They're lashing out because they have no other direction to go in. The likelihood of them literally being threatened with their own lives or the lives of someone they love to either take me down or take whoever down is pretty high. So I've got a lot of compassion for that.
Yeah.
I also have a lot of people telling me, don't respond, ignore them, don't say anything. And there's something about that doesn't sit well with me either. I don't know. It depends on what you think. There are a lot of people who just say, ignore them, don't say anything. It's like a little kid who's having a tantrum. If you just don't feed anything back to them, they'll go away. I've not experienced that. And then and then I've also experienced that it I didn't come from a brotherhood background. I didn't come from an occult background, but I've certainly had a lot of things in my own background that were enough to make it difficult to speak up and advocate for myself, which is true of survivors of a lot of different kinds of trauma. So to be able to say, I am not that you are saying I am, or that's also a powerful, for me anyway. But then there's people who say, well, you shouldn't say anything about that. You should just leave it alone.
Well, I don't think it's either or. I think that it's both and, in the place of really hearing from the Lord how to respond in every situation, because I believe there are some places to stand up and there are some places to just ignore because it's just a trap.
Yeah.
And, you see how Jesus walked through this minefield with the Pharisees, as they were constantly trying to trip him up and trap him with his words or different things, and I remember at least one time where they asked him a question, and he knew what they were, trying to get at. And he asked them a question, said, you answer my question or I won't answer yours.
Right.
And they couldn't answer it, And so I think that there's creative ways as we, process these things with the Lord. I think the work starts internally with what is our heart attitude, and this is what I'm so grateful for in my journey, is being able to see what is the restoration that God has intended, because his promises, he works all things together for good. And he either is true to his word or he's not. Now, I may not see the fullness of this now, but I do believe that we have an opportunity, as survivors or as recipients of this kind of abuse, is to release forgiveness and restoration. And so, the other night I really struggled with some things and was, just in a place of deep despair. And through working through some prayers, the Lord brought me to a place of release and actually being able to bless the handlers, programmers, fathers, who were part of my life, and, ask the Lord for recompense. This is not something a lot of people talk about maybe, but I do believe that we can ask for recompense. The Lord promised, in scriptures that those who, lose father and mother, houses and lands, that was their terminology back then, for his sake, that it would be restored in this life and in the life to come in some form. Now, I'm not saying he does it exactly the same way, but that we can ask for a recompense. And so, asking for their souls to be restored as part of that recompense. And so when our heart attitude is adjusted, instead of, the natural anger, frustration, trying to push back and justify ourselves, when we can truly love our enemies, which, we don't talk a lot about, even though Jesus was clear about it, having that compassion for them. And then our heart is clear to be able to hear from the Lord. Do I respond? Do I not respond? How, and if I respond, what does that look like?
Right.
And so, I think there's some beautiful opportunities if we look at it from that perspective, of what does the Lord want to do in this situation? So.
Yeah. It's definitely it is definitely an individual. There are times to pick your battles, right? You pick and choose which one you're going to address or not address.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, though, it's important to pop your head up every once in a while and remind yourself, if not everybody else, that not everything everybody says about you is true.
Yeah.
I think that most people don't read my blog, and those are the individuals who have a lot to say about what it contains, which it's hysterical when you think about it. It's really hard to know what's in it if you aren't reading it.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know. So speaking of reading it, you do read my blog and have for a while. Would you characterize me and my writing as Satanist sympathizer or Luciferian advocate?
No, not at all. I really appreciate what you do in exposing and bringing things to light. And I've appreciated how you synthesize things down into something that's manageable. There's so many videos out there, and I don't have time to listen to, a lot of them. And so, but, I think last year, I may have mentioned it before, but you had synthesized somebody's, series. And I in that case, I had listened to a lot of it, but I hadn't really got it all. But seeing it in you blogging it in kind of a more orderly fashion, it clicked for me. Mm-hmm. And it opened the door for the Lord to do some deep healing in a way that just listening didn't.
Yeah.
And so that's the beauty of different ways of communication. Some people do better with audio and visual. Yeah. Other people connect more with the written word. And so I'm so grateful for how the Lord, provides for different avenues of that to come into play. And so I'm
Yeah.
really grateful for what you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's good to know I don't have any Luciferian sympathy. I don't know what I was called. I can't remember the exact term. Thank God. He's wiped it out of my memory at this time. But I just thought, wow, that's a real stretch for me. But I'm going to ask Gina, because if anybody would know, she would. I don't think she's going to lie to me.
No. But here's the deal, though, just to understand, is that the subtlety of the system is that there can be great truth with just a little bit mixed in, and that any of us can do that, in the sense that, and that's what I've been deeply aware of, because I do believe that that's what I was programmed to do, is to bring subtle shifts into the church to prepare for the New World Order.
Mm.
And so, I am before the Lord quite a bit, just going, Lord, I want to make sure that this is what is on your heart. Do I get it perfectly right all the time? No. There may be some subtle things that slip through there, and so it's this place of not categorizing, these are the safe people and these are the unsafe people, in the sense that these people might have some bits of information and truth that might be helpful on this journey. This group may look really good and look like they've got it all together and that they're pure and holy and all of that, but they may have subtle things mixed in that may be part of, that shifting. And so it's the responsibility of each one of us not to just intake what certain people say, like, oh, well, I'll listen to these people and I take what they say and their truth, and I just receive it as the gospel truth.
Right.
No. Each one of us have to discern, what is and what isn't, where there might be mixture, because we have our humanity. And then those of us who are survivors, we've got some programming that we may not even be aware of that can subtly slip in here and there, and so I get frustrated with, the, celebrity Christianity, even in the patriot movement and even in the survivor movement, where people will almost worship certain survivors. And I don't think that is healthy either for them, or the person they're, so honoring. And, there's honor, and that's good, but all of us are human. None of us have it all together. We've got stuff we're working through. And so it's important not to think more highly of ourselves or others than we ought.
Yeah, I agree. Take it in, digest it, and, decide if it's, I do that a lot. I take a lot of things in, a lot more than I write about. I digest them. I decide, is there any other information that would corroborate this? Has anybody else ever said anything like this before? And lots of times I tend to take those pieces of information more seriously. And, if there are 5, 6, there was even a question, there are a lot of questions about a lot of individuals, because a lot of people out there are doing exactly that. They're doing the 90-10, they're doing the 80-20. People have accused me of mixing, since I'm a quote unquote Luciferian asset, or whatever they say it is, I'm deliberately mixing in things. No, I wouldn't have any idea what to mix in. So in just taking people's information, lots of people will post, hey, so-and-so, they're in the system. They're not, you can't really trust everything they're saying 100%. And other people will say, well, prove it. Prove they're in. Well, okay. 4 different survivors have identified that individual as as someone they have seen in the system. I just saw that comment yesterday or the day before in a group on Telegram. So there are ways to be more certain about information, and there's ways to be less certain about information. It's really hard to tell. It's really hard to discern. I mean, it's really, really, really hard to discern. I said in the beginning of my book, you don't have to take anything I write down here as true. You really don't. I can't. And that's one of the things I've also been accused of is I don't go out and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt with evidence that everything that everybody says is true, which is a ludicrous assertion it's a ludicrous thing to put on anyone because even survivors can't prove what they've been through. That's part of the design of the system. So
Yes.
what can we do? We take people's testimonies and we take them into our heart and say, I believe you until I'm shown otherwise, or until there's a great amount of evidence to the contrary. That has happened to me. I have seen that happen. There are people I don't trust because the preponderance of their lies makes their testimony almost worthless.
Yeah.
To me, which is very sad because I'd like to believe that what they're saying is true, but if they're going to lie again and again and again about things that I can prove are not true, then I can't trust what they're saying.
Yeah.
There are those survivors out there, and they have a lot of videos out, and they have books out, and that so it's not 100% trust everybody all the time, but it's monumentally difficult to discern, and that I think the occult banks on that.
It does, yes. Most definitely.
It's just a way to easily dismiss everything everybody says.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
And I think the issue of, whether people are co-conscious, is hard to know because if their main presentation, is sharing stuff, but then doesn't know what they're doing, with their back parts or something like that, I feel like we can have compassion for them. And so, they may be spewing out here and then over here other things. And, whether they're co-conscious or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's another part of the mix that is hard to kind of decipher through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's complicated, but I believe there is a way through. Again, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
And that is our only safety, is keeping our focus and alignment there. And
Yeah.
just
If you're go ahead. Yeah. If you're looking for the truth in survivor testimonies, that's not the right direction to look. I don't think that anyone who listens to them is looking for the truth. I think we're looking for a compassionate experience.
Yeah.
Like, man, people have gone through some really, really difficult stuff. My life might suck, but there are other people that have had it a lot worse.
Yeah.
You can learn compassion by listening to survivor stories.
Yeah.
If you didn't have any before you started, boy, you'll wind up with a whole lot of it. After a while, it doesn't take very long. That's, I think, whether you're sitting down to have coffee with a friend or you're at home doing the dishes and vacuuming the floor and listening to someone talk about what they escaped as a child. It's all just a way of connecting with each other.
Yeah. And I know the pain of not being believed, and that really hinders the healing process. And so, it is the encouragement to those who, if you have a friend or family member who starts having, memories surface, that it may sound crazy. I know some of my stuff sounds crazy, and my family has struggled to believe, and don't. And, I just have to understand they have a completely different worldview of life than I do.
Yeah.
But I do believe that we are coming to, I don't want to say a climax, but where there's going to be it's going to be much more out in the open and in our face. And I believe a lot more survivors coming forward. And I'm just praying that there will be the resources to help them to be able to come completely out and to walk in the fullness of life. That's my hope.
Well, I think if the I don't even know what to call them anymore. They're not our representatives, that's for sure. But I think if the individuals who have control of the money supply would quit shipping it to the Ukraine,
Yes.
we would have resources for everyone.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, there's always ways that as an individual we can help one another.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and that's important.
Yeah. And so just being able to walk this journey with compassion is to me key. We don't know the whole story. Um, the the fight may become more difficult in days to come with the harassment and infiltrators and so on. Um, but I believe as our faith rests in true Jesus, that there is a way through. And there is a triumph of his love that I have to believe in.
I want that for all these
Yeah.
people. I want that for the people who cannot stop pounding on me to shut the heck up. That's, I don't think they really want me to shut the heck up. I think they are being threatened to say that.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so, but that's still there's still a struggle to walk through that.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives me a little bit of compassion for the immensely more difficult struggle that they are working through. I can't imagine having to pound on someone else. I mean, I just couldn't. I can barely place myself in their shoes. How do you do that every day, all day long? And you find new insults and new things to accuse. They've dreamt up some wild things to accuse me of. Like I can't even. One guy, one guy accused me of being AI. All my writing's AI, not. And at the same time, accused that AI of being a really bad speller. Like you can't have both things at the same
No.
time. So I have compassion for them. They've got to dream up these awful things to accuse people of, but they can't make it all make sense because there aren't enough things to accuse someone of before the accusations start to not cross. They cross paths and they don't mesh very well. And they get wild. They get why is the more it goes on, the wilder the accusations get, which is at some point when I go, it is not worth responding to that particular accusation because it's so out of this world that nobody really believes it. And I don't think they believe it either, to be quite honest. They're just creating chaos.
Yeah. And the challenges with where technology is going, even with AI, is, the ability to, feed into the system several hours of someone's voice and then be able to, computer generate or AI generate what sounds like their voice.
Yeah.
I think that there is that possibility for the harassment and infiltrator stuff to come to a much higher level, particularly in the podcast arena, where they'll go, AI generated someone's voice, and it really does sound like them, and you go, wow, they're saying horrible things, and okay, well, I'm going to run away from them, and so this is where we have to just be firmly planted in the heart of the Lord. And trust, because I don't think it's going to magically disappear, and it may actually heat up in days and weeks and months to come.
Yay. Can't say I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, but if we can see the opportunities for restoration, for forgiveness, blessing, and to call these ones forth for the Lord, you look at the life of Saul, who became Paul, and he became, one of the most prolific writers of the New Testament when his life was turned around. And so I don't believe any human being is a lost cause, that there is opportunities for radical transformations. And so I'm praying, hoping, believing to see that in
Yeah.
this process. So
Me too. They deserve freedom and a better life than spending 24 hours a day on a computer attacking someone. That's
yeah,
just not a life. It's really, I can't even imagine it.
I can't either. Yeah.
I'd rather have them have, I don't know, a cow to milk, or a show to put on, or a hike to take.
Yeah.
There's so many better things in life to do than to constantly pound on other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. Well, anything else you want to share, Veronica?
No, thank you for listening and helping me understand this, because it's not the easiest thing for me or others to really wrap our heads around. It can
Yeah.
be very confusing, and it looks scary, and it feels scary at times. And so yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on today, and great topic. And I just pray that this will bless those who are watching to put your trust fully in the Lord as you walk out this journey, whatever you're going through, to know that He is your safety, He is your protection, and there is a way through.
Mm.
And so just want to bless you today, and we'll see you next time on Testimony Mountain.